Sometimes it's harder than other times. Sometimes it's really easy. I don't know why. Hey everyone, this is Tyler from Craft & Taylor. In this episode of Under the Radar, we're going over a very uncommon 1978 Seiko Professional Diver, 600 meters. The reference on this one is 7549-7009. This one is best known for its very interesting nickname, the Golden Tuna, and it kind of gets that nickname from its titanium plated case, which is very cool. This is a quartz watch, this is a bond watch, this is a saturation diving watch. So it's got a lot going for it, but the first thing I want to talk about is how Seikos in this era, specifically the automatic Seikos of sort of the 1970s, early 1980s, have been growing in popularity like crazy, from the 6105 Captain Willard to the 6309. I believe Cam has done videos on both of those watches. But this being a 600 meter, this being a saturation diver, this being a quartz watch makes it a little bit more uncommon. You really don't see these that often. And it's definitely more on the under the radar spectrum of these very popular Seiko divers of this era. So in 1969, Seiko introduced the quartz movement, which forever changed watchmaking as a whole and brought in the quartz crisis of the 1970s. So a quartz movement is essentially a battery-powered movement. It doesn't utilize the powering or operation of the watch via a mainspring. Due to the fewer amount of mechanical components to the movement, quartz watches are able to accomplish hyper accuracy when it comes to timekeeping. And for that reason, they grew in popularity like crazy during the 1970s. They were kind of like the iPhone of 1969. They were the most accessible and one of the most important technological advances of watchmaking. That being said, as collectors, we tend to like the more mechanical aspects and the beauty of a fully mechanical wristwatch. But during this time, the more expensive, the more technologically advanced and most impressive watches were made of quartz. And they were also a lot less expensive to manufacture. So a lot of different companies sort of opted for this different sort of manufacturing process and watchmaking process, which resulted in a lot of really well-established watch companies to actually go under or be sold to larger watch, corporations. So the creation of quartz watches and the quartz movement in general greatly affected just watchmaking as a whole. But with that being said, quartz watches during this time were the most advanced form of timekeeping, and for that reason, they were seen as highly desirable in this era and introduced very interesting pieces like the 7549-7009. But not only is the quartz movement important for this watch, there's a couple of different aspects that are really special to this piece and also like just technologically impressive for watchmaking at this time. This is actually the first sort of titanium watch ever created. It's a titanium nitrate plating on the case, which essentially makes it the first titanium watch. However, we kind of correlate the first solid titanium watch with IWC and Porsche design. This is the first wristwatch to actually use titanium as a substance. And this is essentially done to create a more robust case, especially for the application that this watch was created for. One of the things that I think is most interesting, though, is that this watch has a depth rating of 600 meters without a helium escape valve. So if you think about saturation diving watches that are meant to go down to the depths of the ocean and stay there for a while, and be able to survive compression and decompression while performing their application, which is keeping time. I think the construction of this case as a whole is kind of like a testament to how incredible Seiko's watchmaking and case construction actually is. Obviously, we're no strangers to saturation watches. The Rolex Sea Dweller had a depth rating of 610 meters and that came out in the late 60s. However, that did utilize like the revolutionary helium escape valve technology, which crossed over and was patented and bled it into a bunch of other watch brands throughout the entire Swiss watching making community. The fact that Seiko was able to do this without doing that and just was able to build like an incredible timepiece is, you know, awesome and impressive in its own right. One thing about this watch that I do love though is just how it feels to operate. It feels luxurious. It has like a perfect amount of resistance in the crown. It feels sturdy on the wrist, but it's also comfortable for how large it is. It doesn't really feel like a big watch when it's on your wrist, but until you look down at it and you kind of see the size of the dial, you see how tall the case is. I think that has to do with the materials used in the case, keeping it really light and both really strong. And the golden tuna has a really cool history behind it, as it is a watch that was featured in a James Bond film. So the golden tuna is actually a Bond watch. It was worn by Roger Moore in the Bond movie For Your Eyes Only, and it's seen on the wrist of Roger Moore during the Submariner scene. One thing that I think makes this watch so special is how limited they are and how unavailable they actually are. It's very hard to find these watches, especially in really good condition, because they were worn so strenuously for their, you know, intended application. And this one just happens to be in exceptional condition. And I think because of how few of them were actually produced, being a quartz watch, it was a more expensive watch during this era, as the technology used in the piece was, you know, the most advanced at the time. And so that made this piece actually very expensive and kind of only built purposefully for the professionals that were going to use it for the watch's intended purpose of saturation diving and scientific underwater experiments. This was definitely a very expensive watch when it came out in the 1970s. And since all of the automatic Seiko divers of this era are definitely starting to increase in value quite rapidly, I think that we're going to start seeing some of these more eclectic, oddball kind of Seikos that have quartz movements start to pick up in value quite quickly. This isn't the most inexpensive Seiko, you know, as you know, most people that love Seikos and you know the Seiko market, is a really cool watch, can be picked up for, you know, $1,000 to under $1,000 quite easily. I think the golden tuna represents perfectly what an under the radar piece is. It comes from a really highly notarized watch brand, Seiko. However, it's not as well known and kind of only known by a niche community, but it has all these different aspects to it that deserve to be, you know, acknowledged by the greater community and from just watch enthusiasts in general that may have never heard of the watch. I think there's a lot of value here, especially for how exclusive and how small the production numbers are for this piece. So I think it's just a great piece, and I think it kind of represents what this channel is about really well. This watch is for sale on our website at craftandtailor.com. We'll provide a link in the description that goes to the listing that gives you a little bit more information about it. So with that, I want to say thank you for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at craftandtailored. And if you have watch questions, we are happy to help. You can drop us a line at info@craftandtailor.com. See you in the next one. This watch is for sale on